Hi, I'm Miranda HP.
And I'm Connor Calloway.
And together we are
The Bountiful Bards.
Thanks for tuning in to our one-on-one D&D podcast,
The Fountains of Cathaidra. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Fountains of Cathaidra, brought to you by the wonderful, bountiful bards. At least one of us is wonderful. The other one is a buffoon, that buffoon being me. Miranda, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm not sure. Am I the buffoon today? Because I could be.
I just said I was the buffoon.
I know, but maybe we trade off.
I'm not going to agree to that.
Oh, okay.
But if you believe that, that's on you. So anyways, welcome everybody.
It's anyway. You don't need the S.
We just got done watching the third season of Harley Quinn, and we adore Bane so much. If you haven't seen it, please go give it a look. It's a parody, of course, to everything Batman. But, you know, even though it is a parody, it also brings a lot of practicality and logic to it, such as, Batman not dealing with his trauma correctly, and it actually affects him, and you see it, so he needs a psychiatrist to help him. If only he knew one.
I think it's more comedy and satire than parody. But I don't know. I feel like the line between those is really, really, really narrow anyway. So.
Yeah, and then when we get into the differences, it's kind of getting down to the, not semantic.
Semantics.
Semantics, right. Arguments of semantics are never fun, and at that point, we're just counting sand.
Oh my, all right.
Not that this was an argument, more so a discussion.
I'm too tired to argue. Continue.
Yeah, I am continuing. Hello, everyone. So, as of April 27th of this year, the Bountiful Bards have been bringing you the story of the Fountains of Cathaidra for going on 2 years now, because we started in 2021. Miranda, can you imagine that? We've been doing this for 2 years.
What is time?
Time is a weird soup.
Time is a weird soup. Time is just weird. It stopped making sense after the Rona hit. Everything just kind of went sideways.
This started with the Rona.
I know.
Didn't it?
Well, a little after, because you were always getting into play D&D with your friends, and I was like, well,
right,
that
is what started this.
Play?
Absolutely, that is what started this. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak when you were, but you're right. And then you asked me, hey, Connor, could you just build a campaign just for me? Could we just try that? And then I had the idea. I was like, why don't we record it? That sounds like a fun thing to record and share with others. So here we are, going on 47 episodes later, and if you're listening to us now, the reason why that sounds like such a small number is that we only post every 2 weeks, because that's all our schedules can allow. We wish we could bring you an episode every week, but unfortunately for right now, because we're trying to survive in this world and this current economy, we can only provide 2 episodes a month, usually taking off the last month of the year for, recuperation and time for me to build more of the world. More of the world, not War of the World.
Well,
So anyways, we thought...
Anyway,
since we've come all the way up to episode 47, and we're about to explore and expand more of Cathaidra from Leah's point of view, we figured this was the best time to do a story review. We're going to start from the beginning. We both have our little outlines here, and we're going to go through and discuss and talk about what happened in each chapter. There's another reason we're doing this as well, and it's just to make sure all of our notes are concise and in the same point, and if not, we can correct them. We are amateurs, so we are a bit all over the place when it comes to this kind of thing. But I'll give you, for instance, in chapter 1, the very end of the chapter, I have no idea where my DM notes are on that. They are completely gone, and I hope my wife has some of the information. If not, I do vaguely remember what happened, but we'll go over that together once we get there. So that's just one idea. I don't think I've had any other place where I've lost any notes, but this was from 2 years ago, so who knows? I am using a new note-taking system, which is so much better than just having a bunch of pages all over Google Docs. So it's called Obsidian, and if you haven't looked into it, I would highly suggest you do so. It's a simple way to keep up with all your note-taking, and you can interlink and tag and create this neural network of note-taking.
This is not sponsored. Connor is just a little late to the party. I've been using Obsidian for a while. And, as we call it, my hobby go round. I do things passionately and then get bored with it and then put it down and go do something else. But I always come back to it. And Obsidian was one of those things. And I still do use it for my notes.
I wonder who first told you about Obsidian.
You did, and then you didn't use it.
Right. And even though I am late to the party, I was the one that suggested the party. Ho, ho, ho.
And then I went to the party, and you weren't there, and it was super awkward because I didn't know anybody there, and I was just standing there like, oh man, Connor brought me to this party. There's nobody here, and it was just weird. And
But then you get to play with the dog.
as long as there's the dog.
There was a dog who has spots with note-taking. So
Oh my.
please, see Obsidian. All right. So, Miranda, are you ready to turn back the clock of this weird time soup thing, go all the way back to the beginning, and speak about the creation of Cathaidra and Leah?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, chapter 1. So, at the beginning of every chapter, I do read a quick passage that's coming from some item called the Journal of Rake, and we have yet to explore that in the actual world. So, I'm going to skip over that bit and go right into the setting. So, I decided to start with a town called Dewdrop, because I thought, that's a cute name for a town. What'd you think of that name, Miranda?
It made me think of Stardew Valley, and I was like, am I going to have to milk cows and like make strawberry wine? Unfortunately, I didn't, which is good because I was like, please, no more grinding tasks.
Wait, why didn't we turn this into a slice of life campaign story? Can you imagine?
Because the world ended and it's more fun that way?
That needs to be the next one. When you
Okay.
DM, when we get to the end, maybe if you decide to DM, I play a character that just wants to homestead and never leaves the homestead. It's just always fending off enemies, trying to always build a home.
There's a zombie on my lawn.
Play a druid that just wants to be a farmer. I just want to milk my cows all day.
I bet.
So anyways, we introduced to Dewdrop. Very small town, has a church, has probably 1,000 to 2,000 people that live in it, if even that, including the farmers surrounding the area. And it is within the territory of Miro, but we'll get more into that shortly. So when we introduced to Dewdrop, I was able to introduce Miranda's character and her family. So let's think of the world first. I described it as looks naturally like ours, of course, except for the weird items that are floating around in the sky. Great big asteroids, chunks of rock that just drift in the sky and constantly casting shades upon the ground whenever the sun goes behind them. An item that Miranda found quite intriguing, but we didn't go further in until later on. That and also the somewhat symmetrical design of the mountain range, which anybody looking at a map can look at those mountains and go, that wasn't naturally formed, but more on that later. So, Leah, how did you come up with her? What made you decide to go bard? Can you recall any of that?
Well, I think it was to give me a chance to actually like do the kind of weird, fun musical stuff that I do.
Yeah.
Because I do stuff like that all the time. I just mess around on the piano and things happen. And I write music a lot. I wrote the music for our wedding.
She sure did. Our wedding was nothing more than two bards trying to constantly one-up each other. Miranda won. And maybe we can go over that later on in the podcast, but I was told by many people after the ceremony, it's like, hey, Connor, you did your best, but Miranda kind of beat you this time. And I was more than happy to take that L from my wife, my then wife, now wife. So we wrote our own vows. It was insane. So that being said, the first mission I ever gave you, deliver package to a farm. Seems simple enough, like a fetch quest, right? Or a delivery quest.
That's how they get you.
That is how they get you. And that's how I got you. When both you and your brother were given a package by your father, Timothy Wicker, who works at the church as a hymnist, to travel to the Meakin farm and deliver a package of goods. Now, once we get to the end of this, we'll go a little further into it. But the first thing I wanted people to notice when creating this world is that the church helps people, as it should. And that is exactly what it does. And, because her father is a part of this church as a hymnist, he is a part of also helping people. So, like any other parent, with his indentured servants, aka his children, he sent them on the mission that he didn't want to go on. We were also introduced to Tamara Wicker, who is Leah's mother, and also basically the resident librarian, essentially, of this town. She has her own little office / library that she keeps up with all the books and probably does some teaching as well. We never really dove too far into that, but I always assumed she was kind of the, she either provided information to the teachers or did teaching herself of the children of Dewdrop and adults too, because you're never too old to learn. Now, one secret that Leah has is what at this time?
She can do magic.
She can do magic. And what is the problem with magic in Cathaidra, Miranda?
Only the church people are allowed to do their magic because magic broke the world, and therefore any other magic that is not of the angel is verboten.
That is very true. Every magic that does not come from faith, like clerics and paladins, is forbidden. And it is well known that if anybody that starts showing signs of magic, typically when they are taken to the church packs them up and carts them away to another city known as Vaud, which is the capital city of Cathaidra and where the head of the church lies. But that's where the mystery ends. Usually you'd never see or hear from them again. Creepy, right? Good.
Yeah. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
So yes, I created a theocracy that does both good and bad. So at this farm, they found it broken. And windows were shattered and furniture was overturned and the people were nowhere to be found, the farmers. Why was that? Do you recall what attacked them?
Goblins.
What kind of goblins?
Bad ones?
Right. And then the interesting thing about this goblins and their garb was it looked very archaic. The garb that they were wearing was nothing that anybody in Dewdrop wore or anybody in Cathaidra wore. You know, they looked almost raggish, but not so much. But definitely something was odd about them, and they were speaking an unknown language. But on their person, you found Miranda's first magical item. Do you remember what it is?
The wand of locate object.
Absolutely. So, the wand of locate object.
And we met Miss Nancy the mule, who shall not be deterred.
Oh, I remember Miss Nancy. Did she wear a hat?
Yes, she has a straw hat.
Right, and she also stomped out one of the goblins trying to attack her, I think, and you brought her back to the farm.
Yep, because mules and donkeys, man, like, absolutely don't get in their way. Donkeys in particular.
I don't think the Meekins were home when this happened.
Mm-mm.
Right.
We didn't find anything there. Like, they were off doing something else.
Right. Now, you had yet to tell your brother Jimothy that you were capable of doing magic at this point, I think. Is that correct?
I think so, because I was worried that he'd be a bit of a blabbermouth. Because
right.
Jimothy's the kind of person where you kick him under the table, he goes, "Ow, why'd you kick me?" You know?
And he does that later on. But absolutely. But finding that wand of magic, I believe y'all did have this discussion about how magic is dangerous once more, just talking about how worried you should be if you find magic outside of the church. But because you're inquisitive and you're also the protagonist of this story, you had to know where these goblins were coming from. So after another night of rest, you came back to the Meekin farm, did some investigation, and found a
hole in the bottom of the well.
A well. Indeed. Well, what do we have here? Inside this well, her and her brother went down and discovered what at the end of the cave system?
It was a city, right? Was it ruins?
It was ruins, and it was a part of a city, so you were correct. It was like, I would more akin to it to a low-income / slum of an ancient city. You know, it had the buildings and everything, but they did look a bit run down. But it was down here that you found more goblins. And not just any goblins. You found one in particular by the name of Eklar. Do you remember Eklar?
I do remember Eklar.
Right. So Miranda had to use magic to be able to understand his language, and the two of them conversed and found out that Eklar was from a city known as Radian, which Leah knew after a history check that Radian was an ancient city that was gone well before the time known as the Shrieking, and we'll go a little bit more into that later, which led Miranda basically to believe, I don't know what happened, but apparently we're talking to a bunch of goblins that seem to have time skipped forward. I think that's about the rationale you had, right?
Yeah, I said that it was like locked in time, and then the time lock broke or something, like it stopped working. That was like locking them while all the time was moving around them, and then boop. And
you were absolutely correct. That is what happened. But
Genius.
Eklar, who was a teacher in his time, said that he needed help. He needed help because his sister, the chief of their little organization, was basically on the fence about the next events they needed to do. Basically, the cave system you crawl through had just recently opened up, and the goblins could escape to the surface. And they found a village, and they were deciding, should they attack and pillage the village because they're starting to recess back into more savage type of customs of lifestyles? Regress, excuse me. Or should they ascend peacefully? And essentially, you helped Eklar convince his sister through a little micro civil war that the best action is not violence, but to go in peace. Now, do you remember or do you have it wrote down his sister's name? Because that's actually one of the notes I cannot find, and it's driving me nuts.
Let's see. So we had Nadra was the bad guy.
Right, and you slew Nadra, or she did.
Yes. Hang on. I've got Chief Knock.
Spell it.
Like knocking on wood is what I have.
You know, we're going to go with that. I probably should go back and re-listen because, you know, you do have an affinity for when I give you a name, you write down a silly name, but it also helps you remember.
No, I write down what you say, like, so it may be phonetic, but I later will make it sound weird. Like, I put it in parentheses. Like, if I need something to remind myself of what it actually sounds like for Rousar, I put Rousar in parentheses.
Right next to it.
Yes.
Which I love that about your note taking, by the way.
But I put the main name in just normal text. So.
Right. Well, that was basically the end of chapter 1. And my main focus, I guess, I really wanted to get across is that this this theocracy had two faces, one of light and one of dark, because the good of the church is that anyone can come to the church for any items they may need, and they can trade in either coins, goods, or favors. And what do you mean by favors? It's not sinister. It's definitely something on the minds of, say you have a farmer that needs a few hands to help build a farm that burned up or fell over or was just rotten. And in exchange, you know, he will offer some crops to the church next season, and they can take that to feed somebody who's hungry. That's the entire system of the church. That is their primary system, is to organize and make sure needs are met. But then the other side of that face is, because of the not yet seen historical documents we're going to get into the next chapter, non-faith magic users being forbidden, basically, to use magic in her card away devout, never to be heard from again. And only the clerics and paladins walk freely. The paladins are essentially in their own little organization of the church called the Lance of Oliren, which is a organization that Jimothy, Leah's little brother, is interested in joining one day. He's actually being trained by one of the captains from there. I think Captain Copperstand is what I named him. And essentially, that is the end of chapter 1.
All right, here we go. Chapter 2.
Ah, yes, chapter 2. Chapter 2 was a big chapter basically for me to create, because you go to your first city, and I had to design the whole city, which was fun. It just took a few weeks of just constant world creation to get it fine-tuned the way that I wanted it, and hopefully I could do that to the 4 remaining cities that I have rough designs, but, you know, when I start solidifying my ideas.
Sure.
So, in this chapter, Leah and Jimothy go to their parents, who they trust with these goblins. And at first, they're a little unbelieving until they meet them. And then they reach out to the cleric Cathaidra, who is over the small little church there. And then the 3 of them, with a lot of emphasis on quiet, Leah notices, starts building supplies to provide the goblins. And also, essentially, they're going to start relocating them, as they tell you. Now, you don't get to see any of this, because around this time, your parents, if you remember, it's like all of us when we're young, you know, it's time for you to decide what you're going to do with your life. It's time to be an adult. You know, we've been planning this. So you had a little family dinner, and you had 2 paths to decide from. You can either follow your father's footsteps and become a hymnist for the church, or follow your mother's footsteps and become a scholar in the city of Etchings. And which one did we choose?
I went with scholar because Leah is like, screw that noise. Church. So tired of it.
With my powers?
Every Sunday, every Wednesday. Oh my gods.
What's fascinating about this part is I didn't know what you were going to decide. So the story could have literally gone either way. I had an idea you were going to go for the scholar based on my wife, but you never know. On a whim, you could have went a different direction, or you could have been like, you know what, Connor? I'm going to roll a d4. Even numbers go left, odd numbers go right.
I do that a lot.
Exactly. So it could have been that too. But once you gave me that, I was able to design the rest of the path, which, go to Etchings. Take your brother with you. He'll help you protect you. But to get there, you go north to the city of Miro. Now, quick world builder here. Miranda, was you fond of, what I basically called the main highway that connected all the cities? I was very proud of it myself.
Yeah, I think that's a cool concept that you have the civilized road.
Right, and and you can go on our Twitter and find the map, but essentially it's a hexagon-shaped road that travels the countryside, and at each of the points of the hexagon, which is also the symbol of the church, ironically, there is a major city. Etchings, Umbrecken, Easeway, Hilvain, Vout, and Miro at the top, next to a large, giant lake. But Miro is known for one thing in particular, and that, well, two things, historically and then, culturally. Culturally, it is known for, pause for dramatic.
Schooling?
No, Miro.
Oh, Miro. Oh, musicians?
Musicians, the arts, the liberal arts. Ooh, scary word. But essentially, this was a place where people gather for the liberal arts and to perform music. Interestingly enough, it's positioned the furthest away from Vout, the opposite of the map. Maybe they get a little bit more freer there, a little more loose. But historically, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But of those two things, you decided to go to Miro, which you did, and you were told to meet with Uncle Larga, which is basically a very close friend of your parents, and there he was going to give you room and board. Now, 3 major events happened while you're in the city of Miro. 3 major quests that I designed for you, and you could have taken them on at any time. One of them, which one would you like to go over first?
Timothy got his ass arrested.
Jimothy did get his ass arrested. So, while you were up there, Uncle Larga asked Jimothy to deliver a package for him to this lovely couple he knows. Then Miranda decides to go do some research up at the Prime Solarium, which is the name of the massive libraries that are in each city, which is also basically a part of the system that Tamara Wicker works. And he gets arrested there because that couple was found dead later that day. But Jimothy wouldn't hurt a fly unless he had to. So, unless there was probable cause, it's probably more than likely he was not the murderer. I think that's what we decided. Or did we leave him there?
Well, I mean, we had to go find out, because they locked him up anyway. They weren't going to let him out, so...
Oh, absolutely.
I rolled a natural 20 to intimidate the captain, but Jimothy has to go with him anyway. So I go back to Larga. I'm like, Ermagerd, he was arrested for something he didn't do. And what do? Uncle Larga's like, well, I can't be having with this.
Right.
Smash.
And you both went and found out that they were killed by the milkman. You also found Kate the cat, who is now stationed at your uncle's inn, the Mirror's Finish. But you found out that the milkman was a jaded lover who decided to kill off the couple when he couldn't basically have his way. And he did it with magic.
It's always the milkman.
It's always the milkman. He was able to use the cantrip poison spray to poison his milk that he fed, or that he gave to the couple, and they died. Which during that interaction, he saw that Leah too was a magic user, and he stated that, "You're just like me." And Miranda replied in one of the most bone-chilling lines I've ever heard my wife utter, "I will never be like you." And then you blasted his ass through a wall. I was very proud of you when you did that.
Thank you.
Because I guess that's very much... I wanted to show that there are bad magic users. That doesn't make the church what they're doing right. 100% of eradication does not make it right, but there's a little justice to what they're doing, just a teensy bit.
I wrote, Rylan poison sprayed uncle, Larga flex, Leah flex. Rylan was in an affair with John. We win!
See, like I said, wonderful note-taking. But
he was having an affair with the husband, not the wife. That's important to point out.
It was very important to point out, yes.
Because the wife was super boring.
But before you went on that tangent, you did find a lot out with your research, and you found out that the church, also in long form known as the Church of Ader, A-D-E-R, started in Miro. Miro is the original place for the church's beginning. Because, and this is where the plot thickens and the lore opens up for anybody newly listening, the event known as the Shrieking was a
catastrophic?
Thank you, dear. A catastrophic event that was breaking the world. And just before all life was eradicated, poof. Several hundred individuals, randomly selected, it seems like, of leaving family members and friends behind in whatever catastrophe it was, appear what feels like months later with nothing but their clothes next to this lake. They were saved, but they don't know how or why. and riots began, food shortages, generally what people do when they're scared and hungry. And then one night, an individual by the name of Adder came up and stated that he heard a whisper from a god who saved them. And with the power of this god, he heals a small boy who was somewhat trampled in this fighting. And the first miracle was made. And his quote was, "Your world is breaking. It could not be saved. Somebody told him that you must rebuild, and this life has been granted to them. But the rebirth is their responsibility, and they should not waste this gift at a second chance, and then to protect it with their understanding." So, with that in mind, Adder started organizing with an individual known as Oliron. Remember the Lance of Oliron. And together they were able to organize, mobilize, and help rebuild society, starting with the city of Miro. So, I asked my player, how did you feel about that reveal in the story? What did you think about it?
Well, I wrote music for it. I wrote the creepy lullaby.
You did? That is actually that is a beautiful way to go about your expression.
The magic is breaking. Hush now, don't uncover your eyes. Gone is the sun and gone are the stars. The shrieking is all we have left but our tears.
And you actually sang that for the final quest. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, there's a contest that goes on in Miro where people who want to be musicians on the road and make money with it have to be certified. And to do that, they participate in concerts and go to these different inns, and the innkeepers give them these tokens that they can add up. And at the end, they can try for their contracts. And the name of this group of individuals that Leah joined was called Waking the Spine. And she performed that song that Miranda wrote and created. And a very fascinating thing happened at the end. She heard her voice say her name that no one else could hear. Which after the podcast, I remember you were like, "What the fuck was that?"
It's like, well, time for Leah to get on meds.
Is there any type of mental health, organizations within the church that can help? Actually, there is. Because why would you not have that? But then, the end of the chapter is probably one of my favorite parts besides all the lore dump. Do you remember what happened? You remember your jewel crafter?
Yes. Kazlan.
Kazlan, indeed. They took a barge from Miro to start heading down to Etchings, and on board they found a nice little halfling friend named Kazlan, who was a, quotation marks, jewel crafter. Psst, he was actually a rogue. But they also found, deep in the holes, a baby silver dragon, which Miranda instantly said...
What? What did I instantly say?
When you found a baby dragon that was being held up and tied up by chains.
Poor baby?
Exactly, and then you did what?
I got rid of the guys that were doing it?
Indeed. They freed it. They freed Rizar, the mountain's light. He's still working on the name.
Smash.
Indeed. You flew up, and out, and away, and he helped take you to the next town well in front of the barge's route. And dropped you off and said he appreciated your help.
You forgot to mention that Jimothy found out he's magic too on the trek.
I did. We'll go back to that. I am so sorry. But Rysar dropped you off and definitely told you that his mother would repay you one day somewhere out, and she dwells somewhere up in the sleeping spine.
And that might have been a threat. It might not have been. It really depends.
I can't believe I skipped over that.
How dare you?
So Jimothy, Leah's brother, on the wagon ride to Miro, realizes that he too is magical like his sister, and he had to come to terms with the fact that he can no longer join the Lance because they would figure out what he is. Because he's not a paladin. He is a different type of magic user with his martial abilities. He uses a sword.
Hiya!
Hiya. So, that's very important during all this. Oh, and he did get out of prison. Once Miranda figured out who the real person was, and the joke goes on that he was incarcerated and he's a real man now, but he did finally break out of prison. Poor Jimothy. This is the problem with supporting characters. You kind of just forget they're there until they're needed.
Well, but he did help reform a super criminal in there by teaching him that all his angst and despair was really because he just wanted to collect mini tiny unicorn figurines.
That would make sense.
It's also from Tangled, but I thought it was fun.
I am aware. I smiled. All right. That's the end of chapter 2. That was a girthy one. Now, let's move on to the next.
On to the next.
All right. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. I did thoroughly enjoy creating this chapter because I felt like we got to slow down a little bit because you've been nonstop since the beginning, and at least here is a new place you can settle for a few months, if not more, and really just fill out the situation. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it's morning of the first third of Prepardent.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
We're not even going to discuss the calendar I created. That is way too much detail. I'll just have to post about that online or something if anybody'd like to know. So anyways, so when you first get to Etchings, which is a completely symmetrical city.
It was once walled, has golden brownstone, lots of balconies, very exacting, very laid out streets. And outside the walls is cheerful chaos.
Cheerful chaos, just grasslands and hills all running towards and out towards the mountain ranges. So
8 towers connected with bridges.
Absolutely.
Pale blue, bronze domes. This is the Solarium Prime.
Yes, 7 great towers, all connected by stone bridges.
Well, 8 is what this says.
8, I do apologize. With the main one being the library, where all manner of people come to educate themselves, which you and Jimothy did. And Jimothy was tricked into it. He was told he was just supposed to escort you, and then he arrived and was told, no, you're supposed to stay too. We just don't want to tell you so you wouldn't run away.
Now, boy, time for your edumacation.
Edumacation.
Which you need, because he did not pass the initial, entrance exam.
Right, and that was all based on rolls, and he failed, and I honored that. And so he had to take remedial courses at the old college, while you got to go and be a big bad scholar at the main school.
Yep, and I had to meet with Regis Thiel,
mm-hmm.
who is a friend of Tamara.
Mm-hmm, your mother.
Yes. So, well, because, I think it was that Leah has a lot of education, but it's not necessarily taught the same way as everyone else. So it's making sure that all of her education is up to scratch, standardized.
Right.
She never took SATs.
You took homeschooling.
Yeah, or the Parental School of Practical Learning, which is, we're going to see what happens when this blows up. Ready? And then, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So meeting with Thiel. So, schedule everything, meet all the various Regises,
all the teachers,
Regi.
all the professors, essentially.
Get to know everybody and all that good stuff, and get my courses squared away.
Right.
And part of that edumacation is you go for work study out in the field.
Somewhat. So what happened?
What happened was
out in the center of the map, which is called what once was. The land is constantly shifting, and there are instances where ruins will just come up out of the ground, and the soft sand and soil would just, move away from them in storms, or just, geographical. Basically, ruins would randomly appear, and the last time this happened was 6 years ago. And Thiel, being one of the prime archaeologists / researchers, was told to go out there with an accompaniment. How do you say it?
Yeah, you were right.
Accompaniment of the Lance and a few other choice students. And it just so happens you got to go too. Imagine that.
Shiny.
The plot thickens. And y'all found out there an observatory meant for observing the giant asteroids floating in the sky, which I wanted to shed a little bit more light on. And then what happened?
Because then when you shed light on them, it's now shadow underneath.
You're technically correct.
Yes. I think you meant to say harbinger there, but maybe a bringer. But the camp gets attacked by a giant purple worm.
Exactly.
And I fell into a fissure.
Leah fell into a fissure when a giant worm attacked. I may or may not have seen Dune 2 weeks before that episode. Or before this session. Yeah, I did.
Huh.
I vaguely remembered, what am I going to do to transition? I was like, oh yeah, a giant worm would be great.
When in doubt, try to kill your player. And then I hear my name being whispered again because, that's not going to be creepy in the slightest.
Oh yeah, it's constant by this point. It's almost every other day.
Yeah, and Leah's like, Lord have mercy, I need whatever is this version of lithium or whatever. And so I go through and I'm following the creepy whispers like, this is totally fine. You're not insane. Ooh, Leah, come this way. I'm like, well, shit, a worm tried to eat me. Might as well. So head that way, and I find myself in a magical subway station.
Right, also known as a way station, full of dangerous, dysfunctional automatons and some sparky
Defunct.
creatures. Defunct? What?
Defunct.
Defunct?
Yeah.
Dysfunctional? I mean,
Defunct means they don't work.
they did work.
Right, they used to, but they don't now, so they're defunct.
They tried to kill you, though. Does that mean they're still defunct, or are they dysfunctional at that point?
They're dysfunctional at that point.
Okay.
And it's a way station, not to be confused with a way station, which sounds a lot like a way station, but it's a way station.
Oh, you're mocking me, aren't you?
No, I'm saying like we go one way, and then you weigh your truck at a way station.
Right. W-A-Y, way.
Yes, I was being satirical.
Of course you were.
At your expense.
Of course you were.
Naturally.
Every
Naturally.
day. Please, never stop.
Okay, well.
But anyways, back on track. Yes, during this chapter,
Anyways.
Leah was able to find her way to a magical way station of Radiant, full of teleportation circles, and she was able to maneuver through all the dysfunctional automatons, find a nice little sparky friend. I can't remember, what did we name your sparky friend?
Hang on, I wrote it down.
You did?
I did, of course I did. I wrote way too much stuff down, really. Like, there's stuff that doesn't even matter that I wrote down.
Miranda, all things matter.
Because I am like this. Like, a spaldron is 100 troops.
That is important. I designed those.
Curtains are bringers.
Yes, they are. The curtains are the asteroids.
Fall down, go boom.
We're getting close.
Has shiny cloak of many fashions.
Yes, you did find a shiny magical cloak that changes colors.
And I found a station manual. Willie the Cook, Jane the Orb.
Jane the Orb and Willie the Cook. Jane the Orb led you to the engine that powers the entire, the generator that powers the entire facility, which you were able to help remove a pesky ooze inside of it and then basically power the machine back on. And
Do you remember the sledge?
Indeed. But before you escaped, somebody played their hand.
Yes, we found out that Theo was magic because she cast message.
And was checking to see if you were alive because she was panicking, which
I was
makes
like, I am
sense.
so tired of voices in my head.
Right. Another voice. But now you know Theo is also a magic user, which brings a lot of questions going into the next chapter, which is the number 4.
4.
Bum, bum, bum. So, that chapter was a bit straightforward. You left town, found a magical way station, and then found out your teacher is also magical, something she's clearly not supposed to be. So Leah, just like Miranda had, questions that need to be answered. 3, in fact.
Questions that need answering.
Right. I really enjoy chapter 4 for several reasons, but we'll get into that later once we get past this first little bit. So Phil explained to you that there's different classifications of magic users from before the shrieking, and Leah's type just so happens to be a bard. Imagine that. While Jimothy is a fighter, and Phil herself a wizard. It is also explained that not every type of magic user shows magics by sparkles and laser bits. It can also be with physique and your ability to do certain physical phenomenons like extensive cartwheeling or lifting heavier loads that most humans can't. Loads.
Cartwheels.
But anyways, hearing about this magical subway, she says that she wants to head back to it after the cold season and the darkness season. Yes, there's a 5th season of just total darkness called Voiden, and examine it a little bit more then. And finally,
they're part of the restricted conglomerate.
Right, that was going to be the last one, that she and find out that Tamara also does magic, and they're both part of an organization called the Restricted Conglomerate. I'm very proud.
Mom, how dare you?
A parent keeping secrets from a child. Who would have thought? But
well, I mean, it tracks with my mom, who, her personnel file is 90% redacted, so it tracks.
Very true. But she says that they are dedicated to protecting magic users and also to continue trying to discover what that meant from the time before the shrieking. So that is their goal. And of course, they have to do so in secrecy, and there's several other individuals all across the civilized road. And then you go over some handshakes and badges and signal coins and specific phrasings, but we're not going to get into any of that. Let's get into the better stuff. Oh, and she also mentions that you're basically level locked at 5, and they don't know why. That's very important.
Okay.
Narratively, though, none of the magic users are able to go past a certain type of ascension, and that's the 5th time that they experience this level up as you were. I like to make everything narrative from the mechanic standpoint.
Level up.
So the other 2 events, kind of side items that happen. One of Miranda's favorite ones is when she meets a certain individual, a rather muscular redheaded woman by the name of Shala.
Ah, yeah.
You remember Shala?
Of course I remember Shala. We had a sweet moment. And yet, we had to part.
Yes, you did.
On the civilized road that keeps us away from each other. Guitar riff.
Miranda, come back to Earth.
Hot chick.
We introduce the corner folk more and how they are seen as barbarians on the civilized road. But Miranda just so happens to meet one of these barbarians by the name of Shala, who gets quite smitten with Leah after she gives a performance, and they have a drink together, and unfortunately the cops show up, so Shala has to dip, and Leah's like, well, wait, no, I didn't get your number, so she chases off, and finds Shala going to a frozen fountain where she pulls out a rather nasty-looking battle axe to behead both the guardsmen chasing her, and Leah was all like, maybe not, let's just leave.
Sha-la-la-la-la. Don't murder all the guards.
Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Shala came to town because she's looking for her giant friend named Huck, who is magically cursed. And both Leah and Shala are able to find her and heal her before the corner folk both run away into the night, leaving Leah with just a sweet kiss. Then we meet one of my favorite characters.
My first kiss.
Cleric Carmine. Cleric Carmine, the very young cleric that kept up with the cemetery at the church here in Etchings, and he is a part of taking care of the dead. And they met at what was called a Festival of Last Light, which is the last sunlight you'll see before the month and a half of Voiden. They met, they had disagreements, but overall they got along. And thankfully so, because weeks later, a ghost came to the Solarium Prime, and Leah, can't keeping herself to her own business, went to go investigate, and found said ghost. With Cleric Carmine.
You gotta look, like, oh, a ghost, cool, what's it do? Poke.
Poking ghost. The 2 of you work together to help bring the ghost peace, who wanting nothing more than to read her lover's book, which she did not get to do before passing away. And it was during this instance that Cleric Carmine found out Leah was a bard, but decided to keep her secret, showing that there are people within the church who do not agree with shipping off magic users just because that's who they are. You can't help what you were born to be. At the end of this chapter, Leah was woken up yet again.
Oh, man.
By a different voice in her head.
Ah.
This time it's Carmine, warning her that he has heard that the church is coming for her and Private Regis Thiel, and that he has gone ahead and grabbed her brother from the old college and hidden him in a crypt so that nobody could find him. I can only imagine Jimothy's time during that. Here, follow me. Quit asking questions. Get in this stone. Don't worry about the bones. Close his lid.
Here's a blanket. Jimothy's got the blanket over his head, and he's just in there like,
stop screaming.
I hate spiders.
The person next to you is Tiffany. Y'all two can get along. She's great at listening to people.
Because she's dead.
That is the point. But the end of chapter 4, you leave Etchings. That's why we roll into the next one, chapter 5.
I think the only thing so far that broke my immersion was that there was somebody who was so dead set on reading something that her significant other wrote that she haunted the place, because everybody knows if you write something, nobody reads it.
Right. Right. Anyways, going on to chapter 5. Leah and Thiel make it back to the way station, where Thiel is able to get one of the other teleportation circles back online. And since they're waiting on Jimothy to be delivered to them by the grace of Cleric Carmine, Leah says, YOLO, hopping on this circle, heading out. Do people still say YOLO anymore?
Well, I don't know.
All right, we'll just call it the Yeet Circle. Hopped into the Yeet Circle, and then poof, was gone. And where did you end up?
Buried portion of Radian.
Right, that was time locked, and there were no ruins. It was just like a vacant city of stone. It's like people there's still food left out that was still not stale or rotten or anything. It's like just poof, people were gone. So you made your way around this area. You found that in the center of this underground city district was a large pillar with a door on it. which clearly said from the DM to a player or any video game, you have to go here. But to go there, you had to find a key, which you did. But you also found your trademark instrument, which is a set of magical, luminescent keys called the Symphony of Ivory in a music hall there. Is it all ringing a bell?
Yeah.
Does the giant mechanical spider ring a bell?
Yeah.
With the death ray?
Yeah.
Opening the door, activated the boss fight. I may have started playing Elden Ring around this time, so this may have had something to do with the inspirations as well.
It's always giant spiders.
It's always giant spiders. My other campaign started with giant spiders with level 1 characters. They also glowed purple because they were irradiated. We don't have to go into that, though. But after defeating the spider, you found in this chamber it guarded a sliver of golden light that called your name.
It's the sexy golden lady.
It is the... Okay.
That's what it says in my notes, okay?
I'm aware that's what it says in your notes, but you just ruined my build-up. Not really, I'm joking.
Gosh.
Well,
maybe you shouldn't have sexy golden ladies if it ruins your build-up.
You touched the light that has been calling your name for months now, ever since the concert in Miro, and are brought face to face with a goddess by the name of Sivelin. And she explains herself to you, and in our notes I have the lore dump of everything she says, but I'm going to summarize it as this. She was the goddess of another world. 6 powerful magic users were able to bring her unwillingly from her world to this one, and doing so caused the catastrophe to occur on this planet. The shrieking was her shrieks of being pulled through the fabric of reality. With moments to spare before she is captured, she saved as many lives as she could, gave them a message, and left them at the Lake of Miro. She also found out that your world was once created by another god by the name of Meland, who was destroyed by a great being right when he was finished with his work of building this world. And she warns that another being is coming, because Milan built his world out in the dangerous waters of the cosmos, and that Leah has to help free her from her confines so that she can save the world once more. But to do so, she has to find 6 powerful artifacts scattered throughout the realm called...
Fountains?
Yes, Miranda, 10 points.
Ha!
The Fountains of Cathaidra, which is what the entire podcast is called.
No.
It's the big moment here.
Oh, shit. Roll credits.
No, we can't. No, we're not done yet.
Too bad.
I guess it could be a good end of book 1. Whatever.
This is the end of tape side A. Please turn the tape over to continue with tape side B.
Thank you for listening.
And then it does the click, 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 click.
And it rolls out.
Yeah.
Old school film.
No, just tapes. Yeah.
But essentially, Leah needs to free the goddess Sivelin so that she can protect the world. But she could not do so with her current power level. To ascend to more levels of power, she must find the fountains, which are great artifacts that once siphoned magic into the world in a liquid form, but have been capped off by the church to help suppress magic users in the world.
Douchebags.
So after all Tutorial Island and Tutorial Road, Lake, Tutorial Dragon, you finally make it to the main quest. And 6 little beacons show up above these 6 cities on the map, because it is revealed that they are hidden in each one. And then you get to go back to the way station after that.
Natch.
End of chapter 5.
End of chapter 5.
So, the most recent chapter, 6. The chapter I knew would go by very quickly because once I gave Miranda a purpose, I knew she would stick to it and run it through its course because that's what my wife is best at. Never give my wife a quest. It'll get done immediately. And the quest was, find the fountains.
Except in like video games like Breath of the Wild, I'm like, okay, so there's my main quest. I'm going to do everything except that. And then I'll get to that. It's a little different in D&D. I'm like, no, we're going.
We're getting this over with. Is it because the DM spent so much time preparing it and you just love and want to make sure you appreciate that?
Absolutely.
Thanks, dear. That fills my heart with such joy.
Good. It better, or else.
So chapter 6, pretty straightforward. You believe you know where one of the fountains are. So you and Thiel and now Jimothy, who has arrived, all have a discussion about it. And Jimothy comes up with the idea, you know, Rysar had a mom that seems to be pretty old. Maybe we should check with her and see if she knows everything. Plus, dragon.
Hey, lady, you're old. Do you know stuff?
Old lady, yes, I do know stuff. Thanks for asking.
How dare you?
Leah and Jimothy make their way to the outskirts of Miro by way of another teleportation circle in the way station. You see what I did there? I make travel quick so we don't have to waste time with it. There they meet.
You have died of dysentery.
Right. You have died of dysentery. You didn't build a church quickly enough.
Dang it.
A typhoon is hit in America. Makes no sense.
Well, we do have typhoons. We just don't call them typhoons. We call them hurricanes.
Don't they go in the opposite direction? Or is that a myth?
I think it depends on where they are on the...
We'll look it up later.
I don't know everything.
But anyways, yes. The two of you go to Miro, hitch a ride with your dragon friend Rysar, and go meet his mother up in her mountain keep known... the mountain keep, and her name is Tathios, the Sword of the Mountain, if I remember correctly.
Wasn't it Sword of the Sky?
The Sword of the Sky, thank you so much. Who tells you she does know where the fountain is, and who has a key to find it. And it's the arch-cleric of the church in Miro. His name is Kabad. And he has the artifact that will lead you to the fountain. And she also explains that there are 6 sources of magic in this world of Cathaidra. And whenever a creature of magic appears, they are a collection, a weaving, an elixir of different amounts of these 6 sources of magic. And whatever is their strongest part of the elixir, say charisma or intelligence, that will define the type of spell user they are. So Miranda as a bard would have the most pull from the realm of charisma. Knowing this, Jimothy and Leah decided to come up with a heist. They said this cleric isn't going to be paying attention. So they ran in, grabbed it, and got out without raising an alarm, which was very impressive. There's a lot of very impressive rolls.
Well, right up till the very end, anyway.
That's true. But it was during a ceremony, so y'all were able to escape through the crowds that were meandering out. You know, think of a very large church and the amount of 100 people coming out at one time. It's very easy to hide in the crowd, especially if you're trying to sneak up and assassinate somebody with a white cloak over your hood and the sound of an eagle.
And then you land in a haystack and you're totally fine.
Right, that doesn't happen in my world. You jump in a haystack, you die. It's full of...
because, it doesn't matter. You're right next to the haystack, you jump in, you die.
You die. It's full of rusted swords. You'll get porcupine.
It's all death. Haystacks are death. They eat people.
They do. But finding the key, for some reason, it magically shows you where the hidden fountain is, which is out in the lake. The two of you meandered out to the middle of the lake, and through another magical means, were able to enter the chamber of the fountain.
Well, if you think about it, it's kind of like a magical version of a where'd I park my car?
Yeah, click, click.
Yeah, and it just tells you where your car is. Because, if you go shopping and at Costco and it gets busy and you're like, where the hell is my car? Because there are so many cars there. It's like that, you know, except magic.
Or like in Skyrim, when the next part of the quest pops up, you know the general direction and you just get there and then you show up and the little icon's there.
It's so handy.
Exactly. As a DM, you should probably use that more, especially if you want to lead your characters. They're very good at following the laser pointer, like a bunch of cats.
Ooh, shiny.
Exactly. Inside the fountain, it tested your charisma. In 3 different dramatic scenarios, you played the part of a child being scolded by their parents, a general who's defending her city from a attacking force, dealing with a spy, and then finally, the best performance. You are able to use your Symphony of Ivory in the way it should be and just give a beautiful performance in front of a crowd of your peers on a giant musical instrument, probably an organ of some sort.
I think it was really fun to that I became this ain't you never seen nothing pretty, Pop?
And then you went to, I do not fear you.
No, and then I went to the, it was just so inspired, I guess. I don't know, something grabbed me and spoke through me, and I was really freaking terrifying, because at the end of that, you were like, okay, we're gonna take a break. Because
my wife just intimidated me.
It's I think I said something and I'll tell you something else. We've always known about that tunnel.
Right.
And just the guy was I'd shit his pants because it was what do you think happened to your friends?
It's not that you're keeping information from me. It's the fact that the last hour of your torture was for nothing. It means nothing. We knew already. You did what you did for nothing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really
Just
tried to
breaking
lean
that poor
into
man.
it. Yeah, yeah. Well, because I never laid a hand on him. I just wanted to really lean into the whole, like, oh, sure, you did this and you think you're so brave, but none of it matters.
None of it matters.
None of it ever did.
Easy, Miranda. Please, you're scaring me
Yeah.
again. All right, we're almost done. You find the fountain, which first is a pile of rubble, but then it rebuilds itself and looks like the exact replica of this city of Radian and what it looks like, which is a multi-tiered giant tower. And every tier is a different kind of like city district. And then there's a giant earthquake.
Kabloom.
And there's panic.
Ah.
And the island's rising out of the surf. Oh yeah, and there's a big giant beam of purple light that arches straight up into the sky that everybody can see for miles and miles, and it's almost like there's no way you could definitely pull this off without somebody noticing. And someone did. When you exited the temple, the archcleric himself had used his faithful magic to teleport there and try to handle both of you.
Yeah, Kadad and his freaking angel fit.
His angel fit, the fact that he took off his robe and was just a
Shredded,
bricked out orc, half orc, and it was quite a time until your friend Rysar showed up to save you. It was a gallant chase on lance soldiers that followed after on griffins, chasing you through a thunderstorm, almost catching you before Rysar's mother herself, the sword of the sky, came soaring down from above, now reinvigorated by this magic that you've just released, helped distract the lance so that you could get away. Back at
the ranch.
Yes, back at her home, she is able to once again transform into a human form, something she could not do with the fountains covered, because she tells you, so long as magic remains weakened, such magical creatures like dragons cannot exist as they once did, because they cannot physically live without magic to support them. Something so large could not exist without something extra providing it with essence.
I was so proud of you. It was like such a Terry Pratchett thing.
Was it?
Yeah, because remember in Terry Pratchett in Unseen Academicals, I think is the book where that's the whole essence, is like you got the little swamp dragons, which half the time blow themselves up because their digestive system just doesn't work. But the mythical dragons, the ones you really think of, they exist on magic and belief. And they have to have enough people believing in them, and there has to be enough magic for them to actually exist.
Oh, you told me you were proud of me. That means a lot.
Yeah, it was very Terry Pratchett, you know? Like, I always like the whole, like, well, that's his whole thing, isn't it? You know, the narrativia, like, the world is shaped by what you believe and the stories that you tell. That's, like, his whole thing.
I learned a lot from him. I do appreciate you forcing me to read him.
Well, you know, I just did my master's thesis on the man. You had no choice.
I had no choice. One of the stipulations of me and Miranda dating was I had to read all of Terry Pratchett, 20 plus books. And I did. I read every single one. I listened to all the audiobooks and I read all the books, and I absolutely adored it. And I wanted to keep this woman in my life. So I did. The things we do for love.
I forced you to do something you enjoyed. How terrible.
With the fountain now revealed, Tathios explains the church is going to be after you full force. And she just so happens to have a teleportation circle and can send you back to where you came before. But not before giving you a knitted mithril shirt, and also giving her knitting needles or crochet needles to Jimothy, which can be used as swords. Just imagine a giant dragon knitting a chainmail shirt.
Naturally.
Back at the way station, you are greeted by your parents, who are sitting and talking with Phil. And come to find out that your father, believe it or not, is also a part of a secret organization. An organization called the Eclair Luminaire, which is dedicated to taking out any corruption that's happening in the church. It is a society within this organization that wants the church to do good only, and the evil is only necessary when it's necessary, not for, we need to do this because it could be bad. We're only going to be reactive instead of proactive when it comes to this sort of mentality. And with his organization and your mother's, they were able to relocate all the goblins from the first chapter without the church being any the wiser. But they're wise now. Because they're searching. They were looking for Thiel and Leah to begin with. Somebody somewhere tipped them off that maybe they should investigate. Or maybe it was your parents and they vanishing off the map was another reason for the church to investigate. Or maybe finally now it was because, an arch-cleric of the church, one of 6, saw your faces coming outside of the fountain. Something clearly that has been protected for generations and a secret. But that's where we've left off, and that's where the story's going to continue when we come back with our next episode.
To be fair, you weren't doing anything with it. It was just sitting there.
Right.
It's free real estate.
Right. It's an island. I claim it. It's mine. I put my flag on it. Is that how that works still?
Yes, exactly. I stick my flag on it.
Miranda?
Yes?
Thank you for being my partner in this storytelling and being with me for now 2 years. And here's to 2 more years, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for building the story for me so that I could finally get to play D&D every so often. And we don't have to worry about scheduling with anybody else because it's just us.
Because it's just that is another big component of this. For everyone still with us, we appreciate you listening to our recap. And we will see you next time we post. Have a wonderful day.
Don't forget your bread and cheese.
Or else. Thank you for listening. Please leave a review anywhere you found us. You can reach out to us on Twitter at Bountiful Bards. We hope to see you again on the civilized road.
And bring bread and cheese.
As the story goes, until then.